Hi everybody, it's Brian for GadgetUnit.com, and today in this video I'll be giving you my full thoughts regarding the Galaxy S4 from an iPhone 5 user's point of view. So I've had the iPhone 5 since it was released, and I've had the Galaxy S4 for a couple of weeks now, and I'll just be sharing you some of my thoughts and concerns and some complaints about the Galaxy S4 after being an iPhone 5 user for this long of a time. So when I first started using the Galaxy S4, I was really happy with it. TouchWiz was great, it looks good, and it still looks good, and it performs pretty decently. So first I'll start off with the design of the phone. First mainly with the display. The display on the Galaxy S4 is really, really amazing. And if I had to pick any one reason to switch over to the Galaxy S4 from the iPhone 5, the display would definitely be at the top of the list. It's noticeably larger, obviously. It has a much higher resolution at 1920 by 1080 compared to the iPhone 5's 1136 by 640 resolution. And the display is just great. It makes watching videos, it makes watching live TV through Sling Player an amazing experience. I mean, the iPhone 5 display is just so much smaller compared to the Android and Windows Phone devices, so it's the display on the iPhone is just getting old. Apple really needs to go ahead and work on that. In terms of the design of the device, I like the front of it quite a bit. And actually, compared to the HTC One, that phone was a little weird. So about the HTC One, I like the back of it, and of course the build quality and the materials, but I hated the front. The front of the HTC One is just so ugly to me, I just can't use it, so that's the end of the HTC One. On the Galaxy S4, it's kind of the other way around. I like the front of the Galaxy S4 a lot, but the back is just a bit plain, and the camera protrudes from the back just a little bit, so the back of the phone doesn't always lay flush with a table, for instance. I like the Galaxy S4's home button. It's a very solid button. I like having the capacitive buttons there as well. One thing I did not like about the design is how the sensors, there are just so many of them and they're so obvious. It would have been nice if they made the earpiece a little bit bigger and make little bigger holes so that they could probably put the sensor behind the earpiece a little bit, just to sort of hide them as much as possible, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4 black dots, 1 for the front-facing camera, 3 for the other sensors and whatnot. Back to the display for a moment, it's extremely sensitive. You could use almost anything to control the device. So here I have a pen, and as you can see, it does not work. So that was a horrible example. I used a lot of different things when I first got the phone, but for now it doesn't seem to want to do anything. But I used the side of a hammer. Of course, a water bottle works. That works on anything. It's a little weird now. I don't know if I had the high sensitivity setting on or not when I did that, but anyway, back to the Galaxy S4. The design, at least. This is going to be a pretty long video, but anyway, the build quality feels pretty solid. It's obviously not as high quality as the iPhone 5, but it does feel good. The chrome-like plastic sides, it is a bit slippery at times, so if I were to use this phone as my primary device, I would definitely go ahead and pick up a case of some sort, because there were a number of occasions where it either slipped out of my hand and I had a minor drop, or it almost slipped out of my hand and it would have been a major drop. So definitely a case is needed. I've been using this phone without a screen protector, and there's not a scratch on the display. It lasted through my Florida vacation just fine, and the screen is just perfect still, which I'm pretty surprised by. I don't like how the power button's on the side. For me, it was easy to press quite a bit. The volume buttons I don't mind, obviously, because it's in the same position as the iPhone 5s, which I'm obviously used to. And now let me move on to some of the software side of things. Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean on here, and combine that with the 1.9 gigahertz quad-core processor and 2 gigabytes of RAM. There were times when using the device where it really slowed down, and I didn't really have more than maybe 3 or 4 applications in the background at once. And it made using the phone kind of frustrating at times, because this has such fast hardware, but sometimes the software would just slow down and not be able to keep up with it really. So I imagine that Samsung can offer a fix for this. They actually put out an update not too long ago. It was like 21 megabytes or something, and it did help a little bit in terms of loading a couple of the stock applications. It made some of the animations smoother. Speaking of animations, I have all that turned off. As you can see, no animations are there. So it just doesn't seem as though the software is quite optimized for the hardware, which seems to be the case for a lot of Android phones. So in terms of performance, it doesn't surprise me that it's not really what it should be, but it's still plenty fast for most people. Applications load quickly. When it came to web browsing, though, I noticed that with Chrome on both devices, the iPhone 5 is still noticeably faster, especially when it comes to loading full desktop web pages. I mean, the iPhone 5 theoretically has slower hardware, yet it's still able to render pages faster than the Galaxy S4 using the same web browser. But anyway, all of that really comes down to software optimizations, and the Galaxy S4 just doesn't seem to be there yet. So if I were to use the Galaxy S4 for my own device, I would definitely have to put a different ROM on here, and a lot of that has to actually do with not only software performance, but TouchWiz. When I first started using TouchWiz, I was very happy with the interface. It looks good. I really like the way this view here looks. It just looks really nice. But the more I used it, the more it really annoyed me. One of the main things that really made me mad was the stock keyboard. So if I go here, you can see that we have the Samsung keyboard and swipe. So some of these two keyboards offered something that the other one did not. So for example, with the Samsung keyboard, you get to swipe between letters to go ahead and make your words, but it doesn't have autocorrect when you're typing normally with your thumbs or something like that. So that sort of made using the Samsung keyboard bad unless you liked using the swipe feature. So if I wanted to start thumb typing and I was typing really fast, it doesn't do autocorrect at all. So a lot of my words and things were misspelled. So using the Samsung keyboard wasn't really practical for that particular method of typing. Swipe, obviously it does the swiping feature, but when it comes to thumb typing, sometimes when I would be thumb typing, it would just think I was swiping between letters and it would draw the line and everything like that. So swipe wasn't working too well either. So recommended by a number of people on Twitter, I installed SwiftKey, and this keyboard is amazing. It's a great keyboard and it looks really nice. So if I go over to the Play Store app and bring up the keyboard, that's what it looks like. It works extremely well. I'm able to type extremely fast on it, whether or not it's thumb typing or swipe typing. It works really well. So TouchWiz, its interface looks good, and as I said, when I first started using it, I liked what it looked like quite a bit. But the more I used it, the more annoying it got. So for example, when I go in and out of the settings app, sometimes I forget where certain things are, and because Samsung has it so that it uses 4 tabbed interfaces, there are just so many different things here that it's hard to remember what's where. So I really don't like what they did here. Some of Samsung's interface tweaks are kind of ugly. So for example, if I go over to the stock internet application right here, that's what it looks like. And that's another thing that I couldn't figure out how to turn off. When I'm loading a web page using the stock web browser, it tells me when a page is loaded and when it's finished. I don't know how to turn that off. I went to the accessibility settings for Android as a whole and I couldn't find anything. Maybe there's some settings in the stock browser. I haven't looked at that yet. But I don't know. There was another situation where it was with the email application. When I checked on the checkbox, it would say email checked or something like that. I couldn't figure out how to turn that off. The settings application makes it really hard to find something specific, so I don't really like what Samsung has done with a number of the applications. So if I were to use this as my own device, I would definitely have to install a stock ROM or something like that, or just pick up the stock Galaxy S4. That'll be available in June, but the $650 price tag is definitely going to push most people off towards something else. I want to talk about the camera real quick. I'm not going to show you any photo previews yet. That's going to be for my final review, which should be available on Monday. But I've been pretty impressed by the 13 megapixel rear-facing shooter on this. I haven't used the front-facing camera, but the rear-facing camera works really well. The low light specific mode is really good. All it does is increase the brightness and decrease the contrast, but it really does help quite a bit, and it does make night shots look really nice. The video quality is good as well, although all told, compared to the iPhone 5, the iPhone 5's camera is faster, and the camera interface is much easier as well. So when it comes to taking shots, let me go ahead and switch to the front-facing camera. When it comes to taking shots, the iPhone 5 is faster. Look how fast the iPhone 5 is. And there we are from the Galaxy S4. It didn't take nearly as many photos as the iPhone 5 did, so overall the Galaxy S4's camera isn't quite as fast, and it also takes a little while to open it compared to the iPhone 5's. Not too sure if you can see it on camera, but you can see sort of the purple haze over in this area, while the Galaxy S4 does not do that. When it comes to the modes though, you have plenty to choose from, including the night mode as I mentioned earlier, HDR, you have sound and shot, you have best face, you have a lot of nice modes that you can choose from that you'll probably want to check out every so often depending on the situation that you're in. For the most part, I left mine in auto mode, and the other modes that I used were HDR. I'm using the front-facing camera, so it's not there, but I used the HDR mode, which helped very much to help sort of saturate some of the photos a little bit more. Although after taking that, it had to process it, which took just a second or two. Night mode also had to process photos after you press the shutter button. But overall, the camera performance isn't really too good, but the photo quality makes up for that, and so does the video quality. Like I said, samples will be available in my final review, which I'll have up on Monday. So, to sort of wrap things up, my main concerns about this device comes down to software performance. There are a number of situations where it just sort of chugs along and it takes a little while to open an app or a web page, and on the iPhone 5, things are a lot more simpler. Android is nice, you have a lot of flexibility with what you can do, although the same could be said for iOS once you jailbreak it, but Android, you have so many things to do, and if you want to find something specific that you want to customize, finding something in the Play Store can sometimes be a little bit difficult. Things aren't as organized or as neat there. I mean, when it comes to tweaks on iOS, you have Cydia and everything's neatly organized and available to you right there. And I don't know, there's just something about Android that it's a little bit more involved than iOS. It's not as simple, obviously, and that's really where I think that I like iOS a lot more, which is why I'm going to be sticking with the iPhone 5 for the near future. But, I mean, the Galaxy S4 is a great device for those who don't want iOS, and I think that it's TouchWiz that keeps me from switching to the Galaxy S4 completely. Some of what Samsung has done is nice, but most of what they've done is just sort of ugly and unintuitive. It makes it take longer to do things. And overall, I mean, I think that the stock Galaxy S4 version that's coming out in June is a much more attractive option than this. So I hope I could get my hand on that one to give that a try, because I think my thoughts about Android as a whole would change quite a bit, because stock Android is really amazing. I like it a lot. I used it last on the HTC Evo 4G LTE. But anyway, that's it with my thoughts about the Galaxy S4. I've been rambling on for 14 minutes now, and that's it with this video. But I mean, it's a great phone. I like using it. The display is great, but when it comes down to actually using the thing, I prefer iOS because it's more simple and it just feels faster to do most things actually. And I mean, it has a fraction of the hardware specs as the Galaxy S4, yet it still manages to do things noticeably faster than the Galaxy S4. One last example, the Gallery app. Well, of course, the Gallery app was open in the background, so that was a bad example, but let's go ahead and close everything there. iPhone is instant. On here, it takes a couple of seconds to open. Now, for most people, that's not a problem, but I've been using iOS for a long time, and I'm used to applications loading almost instantly. So when I had to switch to a platform where it actually takes some time, it gets really annoying, especially when you have to go to those applications, several times per day. It gets really slow and annoying. So that's pretty much it. I have my full review of the Galaxy S4 coming on Monday, Most of what I said here will not influence that very much, because when it comes to reviews, of course, you have to review the product for what it's for and keep your personal opinions and complaints sort of off to the side unless it really does affect the overall experience of the product itself. But anyway, that's it with this video. If you have any comments or questions about this or anything else, feel free to leave those down below in the comments area. But that's it with this video. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all very soon.